We live in a world where the chase for wealth has become synonymous with the chase for freedom. We're told from a young age to dream big, earn more, build something, accumulate, grow. We're taught that success can be measured by the size of a bank account, the car in the driveway, the house on the hill. But here's a question that rarely gets asked in that pursuit. Why? Why do we want the money? The answers usually come quickly. Security, comfort, to take care of my family, to do what I want when I want. And those answers sound right. But the truth is, many of us aren't chasing money for what it is. We're chasing money because we think it will finally let us feel something we can't seem to find in our everyday lives. Peace, joy, meaning. But here's the paradox. The more we make money the goal, the less freedom we feel. Because money, when pursued as the end, becomes a never-ending race. There's always someone with more. There's always a higher rung on the ladder. When we make wealth the point, we tie our identity and our self-worth to something that shifts constantly. And anything that can be taken away or outdone becomes a threat. That's not freedom. That's bondage with the golden chain. True wealth, the kind that creates real freedom, not just financial freedom, but freedom of the soul, begins not with how we earn, but why we earn. When wealth becomes a tool to serve a deeper purpose, something shifts inside us. We stop waking up with a gnawing anxiety about what we haven't done yet. We start waking up with clarity, driven not by fear, but by intention. That shift is powerful. Consider this. Two people can earn the exact same amount of money. One feels fulfilled, the other feels empty. One feels free, the other feels trapped. Why? The difference isn't the number in their account, it's the alignment or misalignment between their wealth and their why. Wealth that's rooted in purpose behaves differently. It's not about accumulation for the sake of status. It's not about proving something to the world. It's about becoming a conduit, turning money into momentum for a mission. Purpose gives wealth its meaning. Think about the entrepreneurs, leaders, and creators we admire most. The ones who built legacies, not just empires, but real impact. They didn't start with a spreadsheet. They started with a cause, a belief, a deep desire to change something, to solve something, to serve someone. Money followed them, not because they chased it, but because they stood for something worth investing in. And here's the beautiful irony. When we stopped treating money like the main thing, it becomes easier to attract because people are drawn to purpose. Clients, customers, partners, investors, they want to be part of something bigger, something that resonates, something that matters. And when we live and work in alignment with that purpose, we create value that people can feel, not just calculate. But make no mistake, this isn't about being idealistic. It's about being strategic with your spirit intact. Purpose doesn't mean poverty. It means clarity. It means knowing where you're going and, more importantly, knowing why you want to go there in the first place. That knowledge becomes your compass. It helps you say no to distractions. It helps you say yes to the right opportunities. It builds resilience when things get hard, because they will. But when your purpose is clear, profit becomes a byproduct of focus, not desperation. Freedom doesn't come from hitting a financial milestone. It comes from knowing that your wealth is aligned with your values. That you're not selling your soul for a paycheck. That you're not waking up dreading the work that pays the bills. That you found a way to link what you do with what you believe. That's the wealth we should be chasing. That's the kind that doesn't just buy time, but gives time meaning. And it's accessible to anyone. You don't have to have $1 billion idea. You just have to have a clear reason for why you want to build wealth in the first place. And then every financial decision, how you earn, how you spend, how you invest, becomes an extension of that reason. So it's the difference between building a life and building a lifestyle. A lifestyle is how things look. A life is how things feel. One is for others to see. The other is for you to live. Some of the wealthiest people feel trapped. Some of the most financially modest feel free. It's not about how much, it's about how aligned. So if you want true freedom, don't start by asking how to make more money. Start by asking, why you want to make it in the first place. What will it allow you to do that truly matters? Who will it help you become? What legacy will it leave? And then build from there. Let wealth be the fuel, not the finish line. Let it serve the mission, not become the mission. Let it be the amplifier of purpose, not the substitute for it. Because when wealth flows from who you are, instead of trying to define who you are, that's when you've found freedom. Not just in your bank account, but in your life. We grow up learning that hard work is the key to success. From the moment we step into school, we're told that if we just work harder than everyone else, if we just push a little longer, if we just put in the hours, we'll make it. We celebrate effort, we admire hustle, we glorify being busy, but somewhere along the way, we forget to ask the most important question. Is all this effort actually making an impact? Because effort and impact are not the same thing. You can work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and still feel like you're stuck in the same place. You can sweat, grind, hustle, and still wake up tired, uninspired, and unfulfilled. Why? Because effort without alignment is exhausting. And effort without impact is unsustainable. Real wealth isn't earned through effort alone. It's earned through value, through the difference you make, not just the energy you expend. That's a tough truth for many of us to face because we were taught that the harder we work, the more we deserve. But the world doesn't pay you for how tired you are. It pays you for the problem you solve, the pain you relieve, the joy you create, the transformation you bring. This doesn't mean effort isn't important. It is. But it's only part of the equation. The other part, the part that too often gets overlooked. And here's the secret. When you align your effort with meaningful impact, everything changes. Your work becomes more than work. Your income becomes more than a number. You stop trading hours for dollars and start building something that lives beyond you. This is how real freedom begins. Because when you earn through impact, you start to unhook from the limitation of time. Time is finite. You only get so many hours in a day. But impact has no ceiling. Impact can scale. Impact can multiply. Impact can echo long after the work is done. That's the difference between being a laborer and being a leader. Labor is transactional. Is do this, get paid. Leadership is transformational. Is solve this and others rise with you. And when your income is built on transformation, not just transaction, you unlock the kind of wealth that isn't chained to your presence. You begin to create systems, tools, content, services, whatever your craft is, that serve others even when you're not in the room. And that's not magic. That's alignment. But this kind of earning doesn't come from chasing money. It comes from asking a better question. Who can I help? And then how deeply can I help them? When you shift your focus from effort to impact, you begin to look at your work differently. You start noticing the people, not just the process. You start designing experiences, not just executing tasks. You start solving real problems that matter to real people, and people pay for solutions that matter. Think of the most impactful people in your life. The ones who shifted your mindset, the ones who lifted you up, the ones who taught you something that changed how you see yourself. Chances are, they weren't just working hard, they were working with intention. They saw you, they spoke to something deeper in you. And that's the invitation here. To build your wealth not on how hard you work, but on how deeply you serve. When your income flows from impact, you don't need to shout to be seen. Your work speaks for itself. It creates results, it changes things. People come to you not because you're the loudest, but because you're the most relevant to their needs. That's influence, that's trust. That's sustainability. And there's another reason this matters. Burnout is real. And in a culture that idolizes hustle, many people hit a wall they never saw coming. They worked harder than ever, and yet they felt emptier than ever. Because deep down, we're not wired to grind endlessly for meaningless results. We're wired to matter. We're wired to contribute. We're wired to create impact. You want energy, you want focus, you want drive? Don't just chase goals, chase meaning. People who earn through impact don't burn out the same way. Yes, they get tired. Yes, they face challenges, but they know why they're doing it. That purpose fuels them when motivation fades. And it doesn't take a massive platform to make this shift. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to be a CEO. You just have to care enough to ask, What difference am I making through this work? And when that question becomes your compass, something changes in your posture. You stop trying to prove your worth through sweat. You start offering your worth through service. Your work becomes a gift, not a grind. And people respond to that. This is how movements start, not with massive budgets, not with big titles, but with people who choose to lead through impact. So if you want to build true wealth, stop measuring your days by how hard you worked. Start measuring them by how deeply you helped. Shift your lens from time spent to change created. Focus on value, not volume. Because at the end of the day, effort is forgotten, but impact is remembered. Effort will get you started. Impact will keep you going. And the more you serve with intention, the more the world finds ways to serve you in return. That's the kind of wealth that builds momentum. That's the kind of income that leads to freedom, not because you worked harder, but because you chose to matter more. And once you earn through impact, you'll never go back to earning any other way. We've been conditioned to focus on stacking. More money, more assets, more success, more of everything. We celebrate accumulation as the measure of achievement. The number in the account, the square footage of the house, the size of the portfolio. And while there's nothing wrong with growing your wealth, the truth is most people are taught to stack before they ever learn how to flow. And that's a problem. Because money that stacks without direction doesn't create freedom, it creates friction. It becomes a burden to manage, a fear to lose, a pressure to maintain. The stack can make you look successful, but it doesn't mean you feel successful. It doesn't mean you're at peace. It just means you have more. But more without meaning leads to confusion. Real wealth, the kind that sets you free, not just financially, but emotionally, has less to do with how much you've gathered and everything to do with how intentionally it flows. The key to freedom isn't just in how much money you bring in, it's in how clearly, deliberately, and consciously that money moves through your life. Think about water. If it pools and stagnates, it becomes toxic. But when it flows through systems, through channels with purpose, it sustains life. Money works the same way. It's meant to move, it's meant to serve, it's meant to support your mission, your values, your vision, not just sit in an account to soothe your anxiety. But to master flow, you first have to shift your relationship with money. Most people see money as something to get and hold. Few see it as a tool to direct. And that's why some people earn millions and still live paycheck to paycheck. Not because they're bad with money, but because they never built the mindset or the structure for flow. They chased the stack. They ignored the system. Freedom comes when you build systems that reflect your values. That means knowing where your money is going. And more importantly, why it's going there. It means designing a financial life that supports your purpose, not just your purchases. It means creating habits that turn income into impact, not just impulse. Because wealth without clarity is noise. It becomes something you chase rather than something that serves you. It keeps you reactive, responding to emergencies, distractions, and temporary desires rather than proactive, planning with vision and intention. Mastering flow means you're not afraid to let money move. You're not hoarding out of fear. You're allocating with wisdom. You're investing in things that grow when you sleep. You're spending in ways that reflect who you are, not who you're trying to impress. And this shift isn't just about budgeting, it's about leadership. The way you manage money is a mirror for how you manage your life. Is it chaotic or clear? Do you know what's coming in, where it's going, what it's building? Or do you hope it all just works out in the end? Freedom comes from replacing hope with structure. It's the structure that gives you room to breathe. Not because you're restricting yourself, but because you're finally leading your money instead of reacting to it. You have a plan, you have purpose, you know your priorities, and you build accordingly. That's when money starts to feel different. It's no longer just digits on a screen. It's fuel, it's movement, it's aligned with who you are. And when money reflects your identity, it becomes a tool for integrity, not insecurity. People think wealth brings peace. But peace doesn't come from having more, it comes from knowing what to do with what you have. It comes from being able to say, I'm living on purpose, my money reflects that. That's the kind of clarity most people are starving for. When you master flow, Money moves with intention. You save for things that matter. You invest in what grows your mission. You spend in ways that reflect your values. And you give not out of guilt or obligation, but from a place of power and generosity. Because generosity is a sign of true wealth. Not just financial wealth, but emotional wealth. And generosity is only possible when you trust that the flow is strong enough to support both you and others. That's a powerful place to be, but let's be honest. Flow doesn't happen by accident. It's not just about having good intentions. It requires discipline. It requires design. You need to build systems that support the life you want, not just the lifestyle the world tells you to chase. It can be as simple as automating your investments, tracking your spending, setting up accounts that reflect your goals, business growth, family legacy, travel, impact. Whatever your vision is, structure makes it real. Flow makes it alive. And here's what's beautiful. Once the flow is healthy, the stack takes care of itself. You stop obsessing over how much is enough because you're already living in alignment. You're already free because you've stopped letting money define you and started letting it serve you. The irony is, when you stop obsessing over money, it tends to grow. Because now you're no longer making fear-based decisions, you're making value-based decisions. You're investing in the right things at the right time for the right reasons. That's what mastery looks like. Not perfection, not control, but clarity. When your money flows where your values go, you stop asking, am I doing enough? And you start affirming, this is exactly who I am. And there's no number in a bank account that can replace that feeling. So the next time you think about building wealth, don't just ask how to make more. Ask how to manage it better. Ask how to align it deeper. Ask how to build a flow that supports freedom, not just for today, but for years to come. Because real freedom isn't about what you've stacked. It's about how your wealth moves to serve what matters most. And when you master the flow, the stack becomes the side effect, not the strategy. There's a limit to how hard you can work. A limit to how many hours you can stay awake, how many calls you can make, how many emails you can send. Effort has a ceiling. Energy runs out. Time is finite. That's the reality we all face. And for many, the only way they know how to build wealth is to keep showing up every single day, trading their time for income. But the truth is, if you always have to be present for money to come in, you're not building wealth. You're just maintaining a job, even if you own the business. We confuse activity with progress. We think because we're busy, we're building. But busyness is not the same as growth. Productivity is not the same as freedom. At some point, you have to step back and ask a bigger question. What happens if I stop working tomorrow? That question reveals everything. Because if your income stops the moment you stop, then you're not building wealth, you're surviving. And that kind of survival is exhausting. It's unsustainable. It means that rest feels dangerous, vacations come with guilt, and downtime feels like loss. That's not freedom. That's a treadmill. And the faster you run, the more tired you get. But the scenery never changes. The people who experience true financial freedom, who experience the peace that comes with it, don't rely on effort alone. They build assets. They invest in things that continue to create value even when they're not involved. Their wealth works while they rest, while they sleep, while they focus on other things that matter. Assets are the difference between being self-employed and being free, between owning your labor and owning your life. But here's what most people miss. Assets aren't just about real estate or stocks or digital products. Assets are anything that can create value without constant input. A course you create once that helps people forever. A business system that runs without your daily presence. A brand that earns trust even when you're offline. A team that delivers results without waiting for your approval. The real question isn't, how can I work harder? It's, what can I build once that continues to serve others again and again? That's the shift. That's where real leverage comes from. Because wealth without leverage is just labor. You can't scale your hours, but you can scale your impact. You can scale your ideas. You can scale your systems. And when you do, you stop thinking like a worker and you start thinking like a builder. And that mindset change is critical. Builders don't just think about income, they think about infrastructure. They design their lives so that wealth creation doesn't depend on their exhaustion. They build frameworks, not just to-do lists. They create once and distribute many times. They put their energy into things that continue to grow even when they step away. Because stepping away shouldn't feel like risk, it should feel like reward. You want to spend time with your family? You want to take a week to think, to read, to travel, to reflect? You want to stop rushing and start leading? That requires systems that support you, not enslave you. It requires assets that generate revenue without requiring your attention every single hour of the day. But here's the challenge. It requires patience. Building assets doesn't always pay off immediately. It takes time, focus, and often uncomfortable delay of gratification. You have to be willing to do the hard work now for the freedom you want later. That's what separates those who stay stuck from those who scale. Because anyone can grind, anyone can work late, but not everyone can step back and design something sustainable. And this isn't just about money, it's about meaning, it's about what your time is worth and what kind of legacy you want to leave. Do you want to be remembered as the person who always had to be on, or as the person who built something lasting, something that empowered others, something that gave you space to live? Assets give you that space. They give you options, they give you choices, they let you say yes to things that matter and no to things that don't. They give you breathing room, not just in your schedule, but in your soul. Because freedom isn't just about being financially independent, it's about being emotionally available, mentally present, spiritually alive, and when your income is supported by assets, you get to show up differently. You're not desperate, you're not reactive, you're strategic, you're generous, you lead from vision, not from fear. And the best part, anyone can build assets. You don't have to be a millionaire. You just have to think long term. What can I create today that will keep creating value tomorrow? What can I automate, delegate, or digitize? What do I know or own or do that can be turned into something that lasts? That's where wealth lives. Not in your grind, but in your design. When you earn while you sleep, rest stops feeling risky. When your wealth grows, even when you're offline, silence stops feeling scary. When your value is multiplied through systems and structure, life stops feeling like a sprint. You don't have to do everything alone. You just have to build something that doesn't need you all the time. And that's what wealth really is. It's not just about how much money you make, it's about how you make it. It's about how you live while you make it. It's about the space you create for what matters most, even while the world keeps moving. So if you want freedom, build things that keep working when you don't. Because someday you're going to want to rest, to reflect, to be present. And when that day comes, you don't want to be forced to choose between income and peace. You want both. And that's not a dream, it's a design. Start building today. There's a question that too few people ask, and even fewer answer honestly. What are you really building your life for? Not just your business, not just your bank account, your life, because there's a difference between making a living and actually having a life. Most people spend decades mastering the first and forgetting the second. You see it everywhere. People working harder and harder, chasing opportunities, stacking recognition, and yet that they're still restless, still searching, still stuck in the quiet fear that maybe, just maybe, they've built something impressive on the outside but hollow on the inside. Because somewhere along the way, they confused movement with meaning. They built a living, but they forgot to design a life. And the reason this happens is simple. We're taught from a young age to aim for security, not significance. We're told to get a job, make money, pay the bills. And if there's any time left over, maybe then think about joy, maybe then think about passion, but not before. That stuff is extra. That stuff is for retirement. But the tragedy is, by the time most people reach retirement, they don't know who they are without the work. They've invested everything into building a career and nothing into building a vision for their life. So even when they have the time, they don't have the clarity. They don't know what freedom feels like because they never practiced it. True wealth isn't just about having money. It's about having a life that feels like yours. One you don't need a vacation from. One that reflects your values. Not just your value. One that makes sense when you wake up in the morning and still feels right when you lay your head down at night. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. It happens when you stop asking, what can I afford? And start asking, what do I want this life to stand for? It happens when you stop living by default and start living by direction. When you choose to lead yourself with the same intention and clarity you'd use to lead others. Because here's the thing, your income will change over time. Your job title, your investments, your business, these things evolve. But the question is, do they evolve toward a life you actually want, or are they just growing for growth's sake? Making a living is about sustenance. Designing a life is about significance. And the people who build lasting wealth, the kind that includes peace, purpose, joy, and contribution, aren't just chasing more, they're chasing alignment. They build their lives around what matters. And then they make their money serve that life instead of sacrificing their life to serve their money. That kind of clarity doesn't come from spreadsheets. It comes from asking the hard questions. Who do I want to become? What kind of aha moments do I want to experience? What do I want my relationships to feel like? What legacy am I quietly writing every single day? The problem is we've been conditioned to ignore those questions. We think they're too abstract, too soft, not urgent enough. So we delay them. We say we'll figure it out later, after we make it, after we hit the number, after we retire. But later is dangerous. Later becomes never. If you don't design your life, someone else will. Culture will, the market will, expectations will. And then one day you'll look around and realize you built a life that looks good on paper, but doesn't feel good in your heart. And the world doesn't need more successful people who are miserable. It needs more people who live with intention. People who are rich in more than just income, rich in connection, contribution, and clarity. That's the real wealth. That's the kind that lasts. So how do you do it? How do you design a life when the world keeps pulling you in every direction? You start by getting honest. Honest about what matters most to you. Not what's trending, not what's popular, not what your peers are doing, but what actually lights you up. What gives you energy? What makes you feel alive, not just productive? Then you build around that. You design your time around it. You design your income streams around it. You build systems that support the life you want, not the life you are handed. It's not about throwing away everything and starting over. It's about aligning what you already have with what truly matters. It's about making sure your calendar reflects your priorities, not just your obligations. It's about saying yes to things that serve your soul and saying no to things that drain it. Because if you're not careful, the world will keep applauding your busyness while your life quietly slips away. We need to stop glamorizing the grind and start honoring the life we actually want to live. That might mean earning less in the short term so you can live more in the long term. It might mean simplifying instead of scaling. It might mean choosing impact over image. And when you start making those choices, not just once but consistently, your life begins to feel different. You stop living in reaction, you start living in rhythm. You stop asking, is this enough, and start declaring, this is exactly right. That's where freedom lives. Not just in how much money you have, but in how clearly your life reflects who you really are. That's when you feel the shift from survival to stewardship, from hustle to harmony, from success to significance. Because the goal isn't just to build something big. The goal is to build something beautiful, something whole, something that years from now you'll be proud to say, I lived that life on purpose. You don't have to wait for some perfect day to begin. You can start now, today, with one small decision that says, my life matters more than just my income. With one choice that says, I won't just build wealth, I'll build meaning. And when you do that, you don't just make a living, you design a life.